There is a moment every man remembers clearly. The moment he said something he thought would bring him closer to her. Something innocent, something honest, something emotional. And instead, he felt the energy shift instantly. Her replies got shorter, her tone got colder, her enthusiasm dropped, and suddenly, the woman who once acted, excited to talk to him, started fading into distance, like a shadow slipping into the night. Most men never understand why this happens. They assume they said the wrong words, asked the wrong question, or expressed the wrong feeling. But the truth is far deeper. It wasn't what you said. It was what those words revealed about your power. Because in male-female dynamics, a man's words are not just words. They are indicators of his emotional frame, his self-control, his confidence, and his internal strength. A single sentence can expose whether a man is grounded or needy, secure or unstable, centered or desperate. And women, even if they don't consciously analyze it, feel this instantly. They don't react to the content. They react to the energy behind the content. And the moment your words reveal a loss of power, a crack in your confidence, a shift from presence to pursuit, her attraction starts to collapse quietly, slowly, but unmistakably. Maybe you told her how much you missed her too soon. Maybe you asked whether she still cared. Maybe you tried to check where things stand. Maybe you asked why she wasn't replying as fast. Maybe you opened your heart not from strength, but from fear of losing her. And she felt it. Not because you were wrong to care, but because the way you expressed it showed that you were becoming emotionally dependent on her validation. That is the single fastest way to make a woman lose interest, not expressing emotion, but expressing it from a place of insecurity. A man collapses in her eyes not when he is vulnerable, but when his vulnerability comes from fear rather than choice. Women don't fall in love with men who confess too quickly. They fall in love with men who remain centered, even when they feel deeply. They don't lose interest because you care. They lose interest because you reveal that she is the center of your world, instead of the addition to your world. The moment your words prove that she has emotional control, the polarity collapses, and polarity is the heartbeat of attraction. This is where silence becomes power. Not silence as a game, not silence as punishment, but silence as emotional composure. Silence as a reflection of a man who does not need to chase, explain, justify, or prove. Silence from a man who speaks when he chooses to, not when he panics. Silence from a man who understands that attraction is built in the space between words, not the rush to fill it. This video is not about teaching you to shut down, hide your feelings, or become emotionally distant. It's about understanding why your power disappears the moment your words start coming from insecurity instead of depth. And why the man who masters silence becomes unforgettable in ways words never could. Before we start, a quick reminder. The real transformation doesn't happen on YouTube. It happens inside the community. If these videos have opened your eyes, what's inside will rebuild your mindset completely. It's not just a course. It's a brotherhood. A private space where men master attraction, emotional control, and the psychology of power. You don't join for a month. You join for life. Every future course, book, and lesson is yours forever. No subscriptions, no limits. Just one decision that changes your direction. If you're serious about growth, discipline, and purpose, click the link below. Join the community. Enroll once, grow forever. Let's dive in. Number 1. How one sentence exposes a man's entire emotional frame. What most men don't realize is that a woman doesn't lose interest because of a single sentence itself. She loses interest because that sentence reveals the truth about where your emotional strength really stands. Female psychology is highly attuned to microsignals, subtle shifts in tone, small cracks in confidence, and the underlying energy behind your words. To her, A man's emotional frame isn't revealed over weeks or months. It is revealed in tiny moments, tiny slips, tiny reactions. One sentence spoken with insecurity can undo hours, weeks, or months of solid masculine presence. When you say something out of fear instead of calmness, she feels the fear first. When you ask a question from uncertainty instead of confidence, she feels the uncertainty immediately. When you express emotion not from power but from panic, she feels the panic before she even processes the words. Women sense emotional imbalance before they consciously identify it, and once they feel that imbalance, something fundamental shifts inside their attraction system. She no longer sees you as the grounded man she once responded to effortlessly. It could be something simple like, "Why didn't you reply?" Or something emotionally loaded like, "Do you still care about me?" Or even something innocent like, "I really miss you." These sentences are not damaging on their own. They become damaging when the emotional frequency behind them comes from a place of insecurity, expectation, or fear of abandonment. Women interpret emotional signals the same way they interpret physical signals, instinctively, without needing explanations, because attraction for a woman is not built on logic, it is built on emotional safety. And emotional safety does not mean softness or comfort. It means that she feels she can trust your energy. It means she feels you are unshakable, steady, consistent, and emotionally self-sufficient. When your words begin to orbit around her instead of your own purpose, when you begin adjusting your emotional rhythm based on her validation, she feels a shift she cannot ignore. She feels that you are no longer leading your world. You are reacting to hers. This is the moment where her subconscious begins to pull back. Not because she wants to hurt you, not because she is cold, but because her attraction system is wired to respond to strength and withdraw from uncertainty. When a man becomes emotionally dependent, the polarity flips. She moves into her masculine, you move into your feminine, and the dynamic becomes unstable. You start waiting, hoping, measuring her responses, trying to adjust yourself to keep her close, and in doing so, you unintentionally communicate that she has emotional power over you. That is the exact moment her interest begins to fade, not because you were genuine, not because you opened up, not because you expressed emotion, but because you expressed it in a way that revealed she has become your emotional center. That revelation kills attraction faster than any mistake you could physically make. The irony is that the sentence you said wasn't a mistake. The energy behind it was. And the only thing that can restore your power is reclaiming the emotional composure you lost, rebuilding your silence as strength, and learning to speak from grounded intention instead of emotional dependence. Because once a woman senses your frame collapse, she doesn't forget it. And everything that follows is shaped by that single exposed moment. Number 2, why your words felt heavy to her. The psychology behind losing power. A woman does not pull away because she dislikes emotional honesty. She pulls away when emotional honesty becomes emotional responsibility. When your words place weight on her, when they shift the emotional balance toward dependence, when they signal that you need reassurance from her instead of self-stability, that is when her interest begins to dissolve quietly beneath the surface. What you said may have been sincere, heartfelt, and pure, but sincerity without strength does not attract a woman's deeper instincts. It activates her defenses. Women are biologically wired to sense whether a man can hold his own emotional center. They feel whether your emotional world is built on purpose or built on her. They feel whether you are sharing because you choose to or sharing because you fear losing her. And the moment your words carry the slightest hint of neediness, even if they are loving words, thoughtful words, or passionate words, she internalizes them as pressure rather than connection. Because attraction for a woman is not built on how much you care. It is built on how much control you maintain while caring. When your words expose that she has too much influence over your state of mind, She feels the weight of responsibility, a weight she never asked to carry. In her subconscious, a man who places his emotional stability in her hands is a man she cannot fully trust, not because she dislikes him, but because she innately senses that the dynamic is becoming imbalanced. She wants a man who leads himself, not a man who leans on her for direction, reassurance, or clarity. So when you say something like, "Are you still interested in me?" "I feel like you're drifting away. I don't want to lose you. I can't stop thinking about you." The emotional translation she hears is not your literal words, it is the subtext. "I need you to validate me. I'm afraid of losing you. My confidence depends on your response. My world is revolving around you." And nothing kills attraction faster than the sense that a man has placed his self-worth in her hands. Women don't want to carry that responsibility. They want a man who stands firmly in his own emotional frame. A man who can feel deeply without collapsing, who can love without losing himself, who can express emotions without giving away his power. This is the man who is rare, the man who is remembered, the man she respects without effort. When your words came from fear instead of grounded intention, she didn't pull back because she stopped liking you. She pulled back because the polarity shifted instantly. She could no longer feel the masculine gravity she was drawn to. She could no longer feel the authority of your presence. She could no longer feel the emotional security that her instincts crave. This is why silence becomes powerful. Not as a tactic, but as a correction. Silence removes pressure. Silence restores balance. Silence signals that you are no longer clinging, no longer seeking validation, no longer centering your emotions around her reactions. It tells her without words that you are back in your frame, back in your strength, back in your masculine groundedness. The irony is that she didn't lose interest because you expressed emotion. She lost interest because you expressed it in a way that required her to hold the weight of your feelings. A man who carries his own emotions with composure is irresistible. A man who hands those emotions to her to manage becomes forgettable. And she felt that shift before you ever realized you made it. Number 3, how neediness hides inside honest words. Neediness is one of the most misunderstood forces in male-female dynamics because it rarely shows up in obvious ways. Most men think neediness means begging, chasing, or over-texting. But the truth is far more subtle. Neediness hides inside words that appear harmless, sincere, or even romantic, and women have an astonishing sensitivity to detect it long before it becomes visible to the man himself. What looks like honesty to you can feel like dependence to her. What you see as vulnerability can look like instability. What you intended as connection can be interpreted as emotional weight. When you told her something you believed was charming, sweet, or emotionally open, she didn't react to the words. She reacted to the energy behind them. If the energy was calm, grounded, self-possessed, and genuine, she would have received it warmly. But if your energy carried even a hint of insecurity, uncertainty, or emotional fear, her body responded before her logic could interfere. A woman doesn't need to analyze why something suddenly feels off. Her nervous system informs her instantly. This is why a simple sentence like "I miss you" can either deepen her attraction or instantly suffocate it. The same words can feel powerful when spoken by a man with a centered frame, yet suffocating when spoken by a man who is losing emotional control. The content doesn't matter. The emotional source matters. When your honesty is rooted in fear, she feels the fear. When your openness is rooted in lack, she feels the lack. When your affection is rooted in insecurity, she feels the insecurity. Women are not turned off by emotion. They are turned off by emotional dependence. When your words start revealing that her attention is the oxygen keeping your emotional state alive, she instinctively pulls away. Not because she's heartless, but because her attraction is wired to respond to strength, not dependence. Feminine energy needs masculine solidity. It needs the certainty of a man who anchors himself. It needs to feel like you desire her without needing her. When she senses she has emotional power over you, that her reactions determine your mood, her instincts shift from attraction to caution. This shift is subtle, but decisive. She becomes colder, not because she wants to hurt you, but because she feels the emotional polarity collapsing. She engages less, not because she doesn't care, but because her instincts push her away from anything that feels unstable. She stops investing, not because she stopped liking you, but because she cannot feel the masculine gravity she was once responding to. And the worst part is that she does this quietly, without explaining it, without confrontation, without warning, because her subconscious drives the reaction, not her conscious mind. This is why many men say, "I don't know what happened. Everything was fine until I said that." They are right. Everything was fine until their emotional insecurity became visible. The moment she senses that your words come from fear instead of certainty, her attraction starts to collapse. The moment she feels you speaking to gain reassurance instead of expressing grounded emotion, she begins distancing herself internally. The moment your words reveal you are no longer centered in your own life, she instinctively steps back to protect herself from a dynamic that feels unstable. Neediness is not measured by how much you care. It's measured by how much of your emotional worth you place in her hands. The more you place there, the more she withdraws. Not because she wants to, but because her biology is telling her to. And the painful truth is this: she didn't lose interest because she stopped liking you. She lost interest because your words showed you liked her more than you liked your own self-respect. Number 4. Why silence rebuilds the attraction your words destroyed. Silence is one of the most misunderstood forces in male psychology because men often interpret it as weakness, passivity, or defeat. But in female psychology, silence is not seen as absence. It is seen as presence without pressure. It is the emotional space where a woman recalibrates her instincts, reassesses her feelings, and re-evaluates the man she quietly pushed away. And this is precisely why silence becomes the only thing that can rebuild the attraction your insecure words unintentionally damaged. Not because silence is a tactic, but because silence restores the emotional polarity that your words disrupted. When a woman pulls back after losing interest, most men instinctively react by speaking more, explaining more, proving more, or asking for clarity. But this desire to fix the situation with words only reinforces the very dynamic that caused her to detach. The man moves toward her, and she moves further away. In those moments, your words become negotiation tools instead of expressions of grounded emotion. And women do not negotiate attraction. They feel it or they don't. The more you try to communicate your value, the more you communicate that you doubt it. This is where silence becomes powerful. Silence stops the bleeding. Silence stops the chase. Silence stops the emotional collapse she felt when you revealed insecurity. Silence shifts the emotional gravity back to you, not because you're manipulating her, but because you're reclaiming your frame. You are no longer reacting to her detachment. You are no longer trying to correct a dynamic that cannot be corrected through talking. You are no longer placing your emotions in her hands to soothe or validate. Instead, you return to your world, your rhythm, your purpose, the place where masculine energy is strongest. Women do not lose interest in a man who values himself. They lose interest in a man who abandons himself for her. Silence is the return to self. Silence is the recentering of your masculine core. Silence is the quiet rebuilding of your emotional authority. When you stop speaking, she begins feeling. She feels the absence of your attention. She feels the difference between your grounded presence and the new men who come with superficial energy. She feels the contrast between your silence and the noise of men who chase too hard. And most importantly, she feels the emotional space that allows her own interest to breathe again, free from the pressure your insecure words placed on her. But the real magic of silence is not how she reacts. It's how you transform. Silence forces you to sit with yourself, to reclaim emotional independence, to rebuild inner strength, to disconnect from external validation, to remind yourself that your worth does not depend on any woman's attention. This transformation is what makes your silence magnetic, because silence from a man who is truly centered speaks louder than words from a man who is emotionally collapsing. Eventually, she notices something she did not expect. The energy she pulled away from no longer feels accessible. The man who once tried to hold on to her no longer seems to be waiting. The emotional weight she felt is replaced by a distance she can't read, can't predict, and can't control. And this uncertainty triggers a shift inside her. The very shift that begins rebuilding her attraction. Because in the end, women are drawn to the man who speaks with presence, not the man who speaks from fear. And silence, when rooted in strength, is the purest form of presence a man can show. Number 5. The shift inside her, when your silence forces her to see the truth. There is a point every woman reaches when the silence she once interpreted as indifference begins transforming into something she didn't expect. A mirror reflecting her own behavior, her own assumptions, and her own emotional missteps. At first, she tells herself she doesn't care that you stop talking. She convinces herself that she made the right decision by pulling away. She becomes confident in the idea that you'll eventually return with more effort, more words, and more emotional reassurance. But as days pass without your voice, something subtle begins to erode her certainty. Silence, once comforting, becomes unsettling. And unsettling silence is the birthplace of self-awareness. Your silence forces her to face a truth she avoided the moment she lost interest. She didn't push you away because she was done with you. She pushed you away because she believed you would continue holding on. She believed you would keep showing up. She believed your interest was guaranteed. She believed your emotional effort would remain available no matter how she behaved. When you suddenly remove that emotional security, you expose the fragile assumptions her detachment was built on. At first, this creates irritation. She feels frustrated that you're not doing what other men do. Chasing, convincing, begging. Your silence disrupts the script she expected. But irritation quickly shifts into curiosity. She starts wondering where your attention went, what you're doing, why you're not reacting, and how you moved so quickly into calmness. Curiosity then transforms into concern, a deeper emotional discomfort that forces her to confront a possibility she was never prepared for. Maybe she misread you. Maybe you never needed her as much as she thought. This internal shift is powerful because it pushes her into a mental space she avoided while you were still available. She begins noticing small things. How your absence feels heavier than your presence once did. How your silence feels more meaningful than your words. How your emotional distance exposes the lack of depth in the men who replaced you. She starts comparing the stability she once felt with you to the instability she now feels in her emotional state. And the more she compares, the more she realizes that her detachment wasn't strength. It was comfort. Your silence makes her confront the parts of herself she refused to acknowledge. The part that underestimated your value, the part that took your presence for granted, the part that assumed you would stay no matter what. Now that those assumptions are shattered, she begins to see you not as the man who tried too hard, but as the man she didn't fully understand. This is the moment attraction starts to rebuild. Not because she suddenly wants you back, but because she finally sees who you were the entire time. She sees the steadiness beneath your emotion. She sees the strength beneath your silence. She sees the self-control behind your distance. And she sees the man she pushed away through a lens of clarity instead of convenience. What she once interpreted as weakness now appears as discipline. What she once thought was neediness now looks like rare vulnerability. What she once dismissed as too much now feels like something she underestimated. And as this realization sinks deeper, her mind begins doing something she didn't expect. It reopens the emotional door she quietly closed. That is the power of silence. Not manipulation, not revenge, not strategy, but revelation. Silence allows her to finally see what your words could never show. In the end, when all the words have been spoken and all the silence has unfolded, she is left with a truth she never expected to confront. The truth that the power she once interpreted as weakness was actually the deepest form of strength she had ever been given access to. She didn't walk away because you weren't valuable. She walked away because she misunderstood where that value came from. She thought your honesty was a lack of confidence. She thought your vulnerability was emotional dependence. She thought your affection was desperation. She thought your presence was predictable. But now, in the quiet aftermath of losing you, she sees everything she failed to understand. Your silence didn't just pull you away from her. It pulled you into yourself. It forced you to rediscover parts of your character that had been diluted by her opinions, her reactions, her validation, and her emotional gravity. While she was drifting away, you were rising. While she was losing interest, you were regaining self-respect. While she was searching for something new, you were rebuilding the very energy she once fell for in the beginning. And the man who emerges from this kind of silence is not the man she walked away from. He is the man she never thought you would become. This is why your silence haunts her. Not because she wants to go back to the past, but because she now sees the strength she never properly recognized. She sees the consistency she took for granted. She sees the emotional depth she dismissed too quickly. She sees the masculine groundedness she overlooked while searching for temporary excitement. She sees the man who remained kind, but no longer weak, vulnerable, but no longer dependent, emotional, but no longer reactive. She sees the version of you that was always there, but that she was not ready to respect. What she thought she was losing was a man who cared too much. What she actually lost was a man who had the courage to care deeply without losing himself. And that realization strikes harder than any form of rejection she expected. Because now she understands that your silence was not a strategy or a punishment. It was the natural evolution of a man reclaiming his center. Your silence was the moment your self-worth spoke louder than your need for connection. Your silence was the point where you stopped seeking her approval and started embodying your own value. She lost interest because she confused your words with weakness. But she became haunted because your silence revealed your strength. And now, no matter how far she moves, how many distractions she entertains, or how many men she encounters, she carries the emotional imprint of the man she misjudged. The man who transformed quietly, patiently, relentlessly, into someone her heart recognizes, but her pride refuses to face. In the end, she didn't lose interest because you said the wrong thing. She lost interest because she didn't understand the man behind those words. And now she finally sees the truth. The silence she once dismissed is the power she cannot forget. Remember, knowledge means nothing without action. If you're ready to rise above emotion and lead with purpose, join the community today at the link below. Enroll once, grow forever.